A lot of people have been asking the question, Super Mario Odyssey or Donkey Kong Bananza? Which of the two games are better? Today, I'm going to be going through both aspects of both games and try to figure out which game I think is the better one. And by the way, did you know that you could have watched this video early on Spotify? That's right, all Bandy's Been content goes up early on Spotify. There's links below in the description. But with that, let's get started right away with the graphics. You know, it's the first thing you see when you look at a game, what it actually looks like. And I guess the best way to start is to just talk about Mario Odyssey, then DK Bananza. That's what we're going to do for the whole video. So for Mario Odyssey, it is still a really nice looking game. It's been beefed up on the Switch 2. I do apologize, my footage is not the Switch 2 footage. I actually very recently re-recorded all of Mario Odyssey, all 100% of it, but it was the Switch 1 version before I knew we were getting Switch 2 upgrades, but whatever, that's besides the point. Mario Odyssey is still a very nice looking game. There's tons of vibrance to it. All of the worlds are very distinct, very easy to remember. The themes themselves might be kind of generic, but I still think the game itself looks really nice. Now, when comparing this to Donkey Kong Bananza, that world also looks really nice, but I don't think I could say that the themes themselves are quite as distinct as Mario Odyssey, especially in the first half of the game. You'll play through like 5 or 6 of the layers, and they kind of all look the same. Like, yes, there are differences, but it'd also be really easy to not really be able to tell what's what. And that does improve as the game goes on. Once you get to like the second half of the game in particular, especially with things like the feast layer, as an example, it does start to get a little more interesting. So I think I'd probably give the edge to Mario Odyssey, but honestly, both games are very similar in the graphical department. I wouldn't even say Donkey Kong Bananza looks that much better. It definitely doesn't run at like 4K. There's too much going on. I think the game is around the same resolution as Mario Odyssey is on Switch 2. So yeah, graphic-wise, they are very similar. Now, when it comes to the movement, with Mario Odyssey, I mean, you know, obviously Mario feels incredible to control. He's got a ton of moves. He has triple jump, long jump. He can do like spin jumps, ground pound jump. There's a bajillion things he can do. And that's before even getting to Cappy. Cappy increases his moveset even more. You know, he can throw his hat, bounce off of it, capture enemies, use his hat to attack, throw it into the air. There's just a billion things you can do. And everything feels so well refined. And it's one of the best feeling 3D platformers that you can play is just Mario Odyssey in general. Now, Donkey Kong Bananza. While technically DK doesn't have as many movement options, he's still really satisfying to use, just like with Mario. So, you know, he can't do things like long jump or whatever, but he does have his roll. You can pair that with jumping, and he can pick up pieces of terrain, throw them around. He can surf off of terrain. So, he can also do a spin jump as well, just like Mario. So, like, he's got a bunch of moves, but obviously it's not quite as many as Mario. And I don't think it's really necessary for DK to be quite as diverse in terms of his moveset, because he's still really fun to control. I mean, just digging around is inherently really satisfying, and you'll constantly find treasure chests that give you gold or maps to find other collectibles. So while I'd say that Mario Odyssey does have a slight edge on the moveset, that doesn't mean Donkey Kong Bananza is like a bad controlling game. They're both fantastic. I just think Mario Odyssey has slightly more options. Now let's move on to the collectibles from both games. This is actually where things change up a lot in both of them. So starting with Mario Odyssey, now obviously the main collectible is the Power Moons, and these are primarily used to power up your ship, to power up the Odyssey, to be able to reach different places. And, you know, it's a fine incentive. Like, yeah, it encourages you to explore a little bit, but at the same time, some players may just want to like blast through the game and not spend a bunch of time exploring and do that later. And I think that's kind of a downside for Mario Odyssey. Like, the fact that you are forced to find a certain amount of moons to make progress, some people might not be a super big fan of that. Now, you can also purchase moons from the shop to make this a little bit easier. And I guess I should probably mention that, you know, the Power Moon jingle will forever be ingrained in my mind. It is super catchy. And yeah, it's just great. And on top of that, there is also purple coins. This can range from either 50 or 100 per level. And these are usually pretty easy to spot, but then sometimes they are hidden away in tight corners. And the purple coins, their purpose is really just to unlock brand new costumes and stickers for the Odyssey. Now, the costumes are really cool. There's a ton of references with the costumes. There's just a lot of really fun ones that you can dress up Mario in. The stickers themselves, I feel like, are kind of just, like, whatever. I mean, like, yes, it is kind of cool, I guess, to add stickers, but, like, how often are you really going to see that? I mean, when you're playing the game, you're not just, like, staring at the Odyssey. Like, you don't spend a lot of time there. You spend most of your time playing the game. So, it feels a little weird that so much focus is on getting stickers through the purple coins. I guess I don't really see much point in that. And another thing about the costumes too is that they are just cosmetic, which I guess makes sense. Like, there are a ton of them. I think there's like 40 or 50 or something. It was funny enough, it was the very first ranked video I ever did on the main channel. I ranked all the costumes in Mario Odyssey, and that was basically just based off of aesthetics, because, well, they don't really serve much more purpose beyond that. And this is where Donkey Kong Bananza really takes the throne here. It does collectibles so much better than Mario Odyssey. So, first off, there are a ton of bananas to find, just like with Power Moons. They're all over the place. However, they're not necessarily necessary to make progress. So, if you just want to plow through the game and get to the end as fast as possible, you can do that and not spend much time exploring. Like, yes, there are still going to be some objectives in some layers to make progress. Like, you'll have to find the record discs in a few different layers to unlock transformations, but for the most part, if you don't want to get bananas, don't get them. There's really no point to. But with that said, this game does a much, much better job incentivizing people to actually look for the bananas. And that's because the bananas, once you collect 5 of them, you are given a point for a skill tree. Now, when it comes to skill trees in games, sometimes they kind of feel tacked on. They don't make much of a difference, but it was actually implemented really, really well in Donkey Kong Bananza. There's a bunch of ways to upgrade your transformations, give yourself brand new moves, and overall just make yourself feel a lot more powerful. And since the bananas do take a little bit of effort to find, especially if you're just kind of digging around, and you're just like looking around, not spending much time on just like the main objective, you will find bananas, and that will give you the ability to make DK stronger and better. So yeah, there's just a lot more incentive to actually get bananas compared to the Power Moons. And even when it comes to buying bananas at the shop, of course you can still do that. It requires gold and chips. It's not just coins and it requires 2 different methods of payment, which means that it's a little bit harder to get access to the I guess the collectible from the shop compared to like the Power Moon. So that's kind of nice. It's not quite as mindless as Mario Odyssey. And I guess to talk about the jingle too, the ooh, banana. It is very, very gratifying, just like when you collect the Power Moon, but I honestly think I like it a little bit more. Just, I don't know what it is. It's something about the way that the guy says, oh, banana. It's just, it just, something about it. It just like makes you feel, it's just satisfying. It's just incredibly, incredibly satisfying. So I think basically when it comes to collectibles, Donkey Kong Bananza wins in every single category. It really did a great job improving on the formula compared to Mario Odyssey. But that's not all you can collect. There's also fossils, and these range in a wide variety of sizes. Now, of course, the purple coins all technically looked different, but they also all just looked like coins, where here, the fossils are all distinct, and they're even like different sizes. Like there's ultra rare ones that you can find. There's like medium sized and small ones and things like that, which is really nice. And these serve the same purpose as purple coins. The fossils unlock costumes as well as different colored skins for DK. And what's really great about the costumes in this game is they're actually useful. They're not just aesthetically pleasing. And there might not be as many references to older DK titles. Like, Pauline has a couple of costumes that make callbacks to, like, the original Donkey Kong. And Donkey Kong does have some breeches that they're, like, skinned after 25M. But for the most part, all this stuff is brand new and original to the game. And the costumes actually do something to increase what you're doing when you're playing. So, like, as an example, you might be able to wear a costume, and this includes DK and Pauline. You can even stack up powers. These can include increasing your Banergy time. This can include making it more likely you'll find gold when digging, or potentially being more immune to status conditions, and things along the lines of that. So, yeah, I mean, in terms of collectibles, Bananza just blows Odyssey out of the water. But let's go ahead and move on to the level design. Now, strangely enough, I thought that these were going to be kind of different, but when you really look at it from side to side, the core level design is pretty similar. But let's start with Mario Odyssey. It goes for a much more simplistic take. This was a criticism that a lot of people talked about when this game originally came out. A lot of people really did not like how simple the platforming was in Mario Odyssey, and that it was more of an exploratory game, more so than completing hard challenges, which I definitely agree with. Like, most of the general worlds are really easy to get around. There's really no arguing beyond that, but there are also sub-levels that you can find that kind of remedy this issue a little bit, as the sub-levels are a little bit more challenging, but not really that much. Like, you're not going to find anything crazy hard like in Mario Sunshine or Mario 64 as an example. But to keep things interesting, there are a few different mini games. You've got the jump rope one, you have the volleyball. I know people don't like the volleyball, but it is a way to, freshen up the gameplay a little bit. And then there is the bouncing snowman race, and I think there's a couple other mini games in Mario Odyssey as well. But in terms of like the general level design and gameplay, it's a 3D platformer. It's pretty much what you'd expect, but the actual design of the levels are just more simplistic and not that hard to navigate. Then when we go to Donkey Kong Bananza, this is kind of the same thing. I wouldn't really argue that the general platforming is all that more challenging. I mean, maybe a little bit once you get to later levels, but like not a lot. But here's the thing. Being able to dig anywhere and everywhere and finding things along the way, it makes exploring the levels much more rewarding. Just because you can punch through literally everything and you'll find something useful. And I think just for that reason alone, it has a slight edge over Mario Odyssey. And there are, of course, sub-levels in Donkey Kong Bananza as well. I wouldn't really say that these are necessarily any harder or easier. Now, of course, when you get to the post-game, the sub-levels do get harder there, but we'll talk about the post-game later. But, yeah, I mean, the sub-levels in Donkey Kong Bananza are basically the same quality as, like, Mario Odyssey. And there are mini-games you can do, too. You've got this racing one with Rambi, and it strangely resembles Barrel Blast, which I find to be very amusing. There's also a DK Artist mode, which is kind of cool. You can sculpt that anything you want. So I guess, like, maybe there's not as much little mini-game stuff you can do in Bonanza, but I still think the general level design and the sub-levels are just a little bit better in DK Bananza. Then let's move on to the transformations, or I guess captures. We're talking about Mario Odyssey. So the capture is one of the, I guess you could say it's the biggest gimmick of Mario Odyssey. You can transform into a bunch of random characters by, throwing Cappy at them, and it is really cool. There's a lot of options. You could be like a Fire Bro, there's Glydon, there's like 50 of them. There's a ton. But I think that's where the problem is. The problem is there's way too many captures, and none of them are really all that helpful. Like, yes, you will find some of them to be helpful to reach moons. Like, as an example, you can turn into a cactus and move a little bit, and there's a power moon underneath it. Like, there's stuff like that all over the game where there's like one-time transformations. It gets you to do one task, and then you move on. That's fine. But at the end of the day, there's just not much to do with them, and they can only be used in certain places. Like, you can't just, like, you can't turn into the tree whenever you want. You can only be a tree in a couple different levels, and that's about it. Now, Donkey Kong Bananza does not have captures, but it has 5 transformations, which I would kind of consider to be the same concept, except a lot more simplified, and I think it's a lot better, honestly. So while obviously, 5 transformations isn't a lot, there's so much more in depth, and like I said earlier, you can unlock moves for each transformation through the skill tree to make them so much more usable and fun to play as. And on top of that, they can be unlocked, so you don't just have them right away. You get a lot of time with just regular DK, but you also get a chance to use the transformations to get through certain parts of the levels, and you can access these whenever you want. You do have to have your Banergy meter full, but it's really easy to fill it up. It takes almost no effort. But yeah, it does have to be full. And like I said, you can basically access any of the transformations at any point in time. And I think that alone, and just the fact that they're so much more useful, just makes them way better than any of the captures in Mario Odyssey. Might not be as unique as a concept, but like at the end of the day, it's just more fun to be the elephant and suck up everything around you, or turn into Kong Bananza and just smash through tough terrain, or, even just like running around on water is the zebra. Now I'd like to touch on the music for a little bit. I think that both games have kind of struggled with music, which is a little weird. I'm not saying the music is bad in Mario Odyssey or Donkey Kong Bananza, but when you go back to their older titles, let's think, Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze or Super Mario Galaxy, you immediately think of the music from those games when you hear those titles. When it comes to Mario Odyssey, I would say, yes, there are some songs that are pretty easy to remember. Like, I always think of stuff that comes from, like, New Donk City or Wooded Kingdom, or even, First Landing in Cascade Kingdom. And, of course, Jump Up Superstar. There are a bunch of hits here, but at the same time, there's a lot of atmospheric music, which is good for the actual gameplay and getting more immersed in it. But in terms of like catchy melodies, you're not going to find a lot of that. I guess it's just, I don't know, I just don't find Odyssey music nearly as good as just the older Mario titles. And a bunch of time has passed now. It's not even just like nostalgia. Mario Odyssey's 8 years old now, and I still think the music from Sunshine and Galaxy is way better than Mario Odyssey. When it comes to Donkey Kong Bananza, it's pretty much the exact same scenario. Like, you're not... I know, I just played the game, so of course some of the music is going to grow on me, but so much of it is not really typical Nintendo music. It is very, very atmospheric focused, and it's fine, but like, I don't really remember any of it. The only music from Bananza that I remember is the transformation stuff, as well as Heart of Gold or the credit song. And that's because they're lyrical songs sung by Pauline, and I guess that's really all I have to say about it. Like, unfortunately, it's weird. Like, Mario Odyssey and DK Bananza both have a couple songs that are, like, absolute bangers, but a lot of the game is just, like, there's just not to really remember from it. But now, let's move on to the bosses, and I think this is where both games kind of fall flat a little bit. They're not necessarily bad bosses, they're just not very difficult. So starting with Mario Odyssey, we have the Brutals, and you replay them a couple different times. There's also a few unique bosses in the game. And of course, the final boss with Bowser is lame. It's a little bit lame, I'm not gonna lie. Like, we've already fought that kind of Bowser in Clouded Kingdom, and then you fight him again. And the only difference, really, with the final boss in Mario Odyssey is that you can become Bowser for the very end, but that's not really a boss fight. That's just more platforming, which is fine. It's really, really fun. Like, I really love the ending of Mario Odyssey, but in terms of the actual boss fight, it's really, really easy. There's just not much to it. And, I don't know. The bosses in Mario Odyssey are not much of any... There's just not much to them. And, unfortunately, Donkey Kong Bananza does not really remedy this issue. I'd actually argue that most of the bosses in the game are even easier than in Mario Odyssey. And I think this just because, like, DK is so powerful, he could just punch through anything, and it's really easy to grab, pieces of rock and stuff and throw them at bosses, and there's just not much. But Bananza still wins in the boss department because of the final boss, and that is because you fight King K. Rool. I honestly might argue that K. Rool could potentially be the best Nintendo boss ever when it comes to the final boss, at least. Like, all the phases that you go through, the fake out ending, just how incredible you feel as you're going through. There's a remix of Gangplank Galeon. The very last phase, it takes you to the DK64 boxing ring, and K. Rool transforms into this, like, new freaky version of himself, and he gets really, really powerful. I gotta say, it's one of the most memorable boss fights that I've ever really played in a video game in general, and it's so weird to me, because, like, the endings for Mario Odyssey and Bananza are both great. Obviously, the Bananza one is far superior, but the other bosses just kind of feel thrown together, and it's kind of weird, especially with Bananza. I feel like Bananza had a really, really easy way to improve the bosses compared to Mario Odyssey. All they really have to do is just require you to use the transformations in more difficult ways. So, like, maybe with the ostrich, there's a boss flying around at the ground, and you can only hit it with, like, eggs or something, and it forces you to learn how the egg bombs work. And I don't know, I think stuff like that would have been nice. Like, I don't even remember most of the bosses in Bonanza besides K. Rool, because that one just stood out so much. And it's definitely good that the highlight of the bosses is the final boss, but it would be nice if the bosses in between were just a little bit meatier, had a little bit more to do. Now let's talk about the post game. And with Mario Odyssey, you can unlock Dark Side and Darker Side, and these are mostly just an assortment of harder sub-levels, and you've also got boss refights, and it's fine. I wouldn't say it's super fun to find the rest of the Power Moons. It's weird to say that, because the first time that I played the game, it was really fun for me to actually go through and find the rest of the moons, but it is also a little bit grindy. There's a ton of Power Moons that are just kind of repeats over and over. Like, there's a bunch of them where you have to use the binoculars and find the taxi in the sky, or you have to take the acorn thing, throw it into the plant, and then wait for like 20 minutes or whatever. You're gonna find a lot of moons, a lot of moon concepts that repeat each other over and over and over again. And hell, I haven't even brought up Toadette yet, where you have to talk to Toadette to get like 50 stars, and you only get one at a time, which is pretty obnoxious. Yeah, I mean, it can be fun. It definitely can be fun, but on repeat playthroughs, I don't really have much incentive to go back at 100% Mario Odyssey. Now, in terms of the secret final level, it really isn't that hard, and I think it could have been if the game didn't give you hearts along the way. They clearly are shooting for like a Champion's Road or a Grandmaster Galaxy, or the Perfect Run, I guess, as you might know better. That's what they were going for with this Darker Side level at the very end, but like, they give you hearts on the way. And yeah, sure, there's no checkpoint, but like, you can just heal like halfway through. There's like 2 or 3 spots where you can get hearts. So it kind of takes away all the difficulty. And in terms of maxing out your Power Moons, this is also very, very grindy, and you don't get much of a reward outside of a top hat on the castle. And in terms of Donkey Kong Bananza, I think this is honestly a lot better. It's not great post-game, but it definitely is a little bit more improved. So what basically goes down is once you finish the game, you have to go back to all of the temples, or not the temple, the place where you get the transformations. I don't know exactly what you would call it, but you go back and you do like a zebra theme level, ostrich, Kong Bonanza, snake, elephant. You go to all 5 of them, and you have to play really, really long levels that are much, much more challenging than anything you've played so far. And once you've beaten those, you basically unlock the ability to be able to get this little golden power-up, and the golden power-up can only be unlocked through the skill tree. So again, you're given incentive to hunt for Power Moons to continue to build on your skill tree. And it's really cool that this stuff can only be unlocked in the post game, and it actually makes you want to play it more. It is really cool, but it's not perfect. The secret final level, it's in this game too, but it is way too short and way too easy. There's like nothing to it. Like, there's a little bit of flying, and you're like using bombs to hit thorns and stuff, and most of the platforming is just way too freaking easy. It's so short. It just felt very, very thrown together, which is weird because the rest of the game feels so well polished, while the secret final level is just like, it's just fine. But even still, the post-game levels that I brought up earlier are a lot better and more interesting than anything you'll find in Dark Side or Darker Side. And in terms of like maxing out your bananas, this is also very grindy. There's not really a fast way to do it like with Power Moons, but if you do it, basically when you fall down, the balloon, the red balloon that saves you, turns into a Donkey Kong balloon, which references the balloons from Donkey Kong Country. So that's kind of cute. I like that they added that in as a little Easter egg just for hitting that 1,000 bananas. Yeah, I think that's probably about it. And when you really think about it, I gotta say, I'm pretty sure DK Bananza is the better game. I don't think it's going to be as remembered as Mario Odyssey, just because Mario is so much more iconic. So many people know about Mario compared to Donkey Kong, but this game really, really deserves the praise that it's been getting. It is absolutely incredible. I mean, really, like, when you boil it down, like, the only big flaw I think Bananza has is just the bosses. I really do wish those were a little bit more challenging, and I guess, like, it would have been nice if some of the sub-levels were a little bit harder too. But in terms of just running around, collecting stuff, it is an absolute blast. I mean, both games are great. but I do think Bananza manages to top Mario Odyssey, and that is very impressive considering how fantastic Mario Odyssey is. I don't know how the team did it, but they did a really, really great job. And this just makes me really curious for what the next 3D Mario is going to be like, because, you know, that's coming up. You know, we don't really know what that's going to entail quite yet. But I'm wondering if the next 3D Mario is going to be like another Mario Odyssey, or if it's going to take a completely different path entirely in terms of the general structure. Like, is there still going to be very explorative levels? Are they going to focus more on platforming? Is there going to be like I have to imagine the next 3D Mario will basically be Bowser's Fury, where they're just really, really big levels with just like stuff to collect everywhere, but there's actual platforming to do. I'm assuming that's what it's going to be like. But yeah, that's about all I got. Let me know what game you think is better or worse in the comments, and I'm going to go. All right, bye.